Hey, folks, in this interview, I'm speaking with model Riley Jade. We're going to be talking about life in front of the lens. This is Twitter. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, on this interview, I'm talking with model Riley Jade about, well, first of all, she's written a book called In Front of the Lens, and it sort of goes into the world of a model in front of the lens and some important tips and tricks on how we as photographers behind the lens can have a more successful relationship that results in great photos. So she's put that together. So I thought it would be great to have a discussion about that and kind of talk about it. You know, what are the pluses? What are the minuses? Where are the landmines, for photographers that are looking to get into this genre of photography, shooting models. And it could be a minefield, especially in these days with the Me Too movement and all that. A lot of photographers want to move into this genre, but don't for fear of doing or saying the wrong thing. So Riley is here to help us hopefully not step on any landmines.
I'll try.
Hey, Riley, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this topic. This is, like I said in the little intro there, this is obviously an important topic. And photographers that, look at all these gorgeous images of beautiful women in magazines and online, et cetera, and they dream of one day shooting like that, but the hurdle to get to that is where do you find people? There's a lot of amateur models, but not a whole lot of professional models that know how to pose. So I want to talk about that, and then also some of the pitfalls that photographers should avoid when trying to shoot this kind of genre. So let's start with just a little bit of history on you. So Riley Jade, who are you, and where are you from, and what brought you to this world of modeling?
Yeah, so I'm Australian, and I started modeling about 8 years ago while I was at uni, and I just did it as a hobby for about 4 years, and then I started to get into more paid work. And yeah, when COVID's not happening, I'm traveling around Australia and around the world shooting, which I absolutely love. So yeah, and then obviously during lockdown, I was stuck in one place, so I decided to put my little ebook together.
That's great. And how's that going? How's the ebook going so far?
Yeah, it's honestly going so much better than I expected. I hit 100 sales not long ago, and I've had so much amazing feedback, which is what's really important. So yeah, I'm really happy with it.
That's good. Well, I want to help get the word out about it, because I think like I said, I think it's a really important topic for photographers to just sort of understand how to move into that genre. So let's talk about that a little bit. So you've been photographed many, many, many times, and you've worked with many, many, many photographers of all skill levels, I'm sure. Out of all the people you've worked with, what are some of the traits of the more successful photographers out there? Is it they come organized, they're assertive, or they're, collaborative? What do you feel is the trait of the successful photographer?
Yeah, I always say the key to any successful shoot is communication and respect. If you've got those two nailed, then you're going to have a great shoot. And definitely, like you said, being a collaborative effort, no matter, even if the photographer has a very specific idea, still including the model's ideas. You're not hiring a mannequin, you're hiring a person with ideas and experiences. So it'd be a waste not to use that. So definitely communication, respect, and having that sort of team collaborative approach to the shoot is the key.
Yeah. And then what does that collaboration look like? Does it when the photographer first contacts you and says, hey, is it that they know what they want but they allow you to input your thoughts into what the final shot is going to be, or does it manifest differently?
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of shoot. If it's a TFP, then it's obviously the model's ideas really need to be included. But, if a photographer contacts me for a paid shoot with a specific idea, that collaboration comes in the fact that they get I agree to those ideas. So they really communicate them well, and they're like, is that okay with you, etc. So that's just not a big information dump. On me, it's a back and forth communication, like agree with that, yep. And then we get to the shoot, that, oh, do you have any ideas to add to this, etc. And it just really makes for a more enjoyable experience for everyone, and great shoots, great shots. So yeah.
Yeah, it should be fun, right? At the end of the day,
Oh,
it should be doing a shoot should be you're having a good time. It's work, obviously, but it shouldn't be stressful or there shouldn't be attitudes on the set and that kind of thing. Have you had that kind of thing happen where you and the photographer, you just didn't gel and the final shots reflected that?
I get along with pretty much most people, but I just think
Yeah,
the issue is when people micromanage. That's
yeah.
sort of when it makes it a bit hard. They don't give me a
Mhm.
chance to even pose at all. They're sort of, I'll move your hand up here and there. So I think it's important just to, you're hiring someone with experience and, who knows what they're doing. So give
Mhm.
them a chance to show you that and to sort of show you their skills. So I think micromanaging is when it does kill a shoot a bit.
Yeah, I wonder where that line is, the line between preparedness and micromanaging, right? So the photographer that comes and they have their sketches and they know exactly the 5 shots that they want to nail and they have the outfits and there's the makeup artist and they have the vision of what that final shot is versus, and then obviously you want your collaboration in there because that's what you're bringing to the mix, that's your profession. But then, versus the photographer that just shows up and then kind of just wings it. It's like, hey, I got great lights, I got a camera, I got a makeup artist, I got a pretty girl, let's make some magic. What's the best way? Is there a better way to approach a shoot, or is it generally going to be one of those directions?
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends on the location. Some
Yeah.
locations you can be much more inspired by the location, and outdoor locations you can't plan it all exactly because you never know what's going to happen. So I think it's important to have some idea of what you want to do, but also be open to sort of seeing where the creative vibes go and what happens. Because I think
Yeah.
that's, well, my shoots, the magic happens when you kind of go off track. That's when you get those amazing shots that neither of you planned. It's like, wow, these are cool. So I think, yeah,
Yeah.
just being open to having a plan, but being open to seeing where it goes.
Yeah, no, I totally, because then it's like you start with a plan and then you deviate from that plan, but you still have that, you have that framework that you're working from so that, you can have something to branch off from, but you always have that framework there, right?
Yeah, I think that framework's really important from like a respect point of view. So you have that framework of where the model's comfort zone are, and sort of you might deviate, but make sure you stay in that level. Don't ask them to deviate in a way which is going to make them uncomfortable. I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned an acronym at the beginning, TFP.
Oh,
So define. I know what TFP is, but define TFP for us, for the photographers that may not be familiar with that concept.
yeah, so TFP, I think it literally stands for time for print or time for photos. It's a bit, depends where you're talking. But yeah, so the idea is that as a model, I'm giving my time at a photo shoot in exchange for photos. So it's really great for building a portfolio. Or, when you get a bit more experience, it's just I think of it like a bit of a jam session, with musicians. It's just creative people getting together, and yeah, being creative. I think the important things with TFP is to make sure you're working with someone on your level, so you're not being used or using someone.
Hmm.
So I would work with photographers who are a bit more sort of professional and experienced, because that's sort of where my level is. So then I'm getting as much benefit from the shoot as a photographer would be. And I think that's the importance, because TFP is amazing. It's really helped me so much in my career, but it does get used and abused a lot. So you just, yeah, be wary of that.
Yeah, and that the TFP or time for prints are just sort of the exchange of services. Yeah, you hit it exactly on the head. It has to be an even exchange. Where, hey, super experienced model working with a guy that just unboxed his camera, not necessarily an even exchange, and vice versa. Super experienced photographer working with a brand new model. So how do you gauge that though? Without actually being on set and doing a shoot together.
Yeah, I think it is. So I always find it hard. Well, photographers tell me it's hard to gauge a model's, you can see their portfolio, but you don't really know the behind the scenes. Did someone put them in that pose, or did they come up with themselves? So I think talking to other photographers, either getting references, and also a lot of models will share like sort of posing videos of themselves, and that's a really great way to sort of showcase that I can pose freely. I'm not being dictated on my poses. But I think just I don't know, like in Australia, the art nude community is quite small, so just everyone sort of chats, and you get a feel for different people in the community. So
yeah, and
don't be
I'm
afraid.
sure with a small community, I'm sure bad news travels fast, right? So
That's the other side of it. If you're a creeper, you get caught out.
Good. It's
Yeah.
Darwinism in the photography world. What
True.
is what does it look like with regard to how photographers can source models? Like where should the guy that's watching this is like, yes, I want to hire a Riley Jade type person to pose for me in front of my camera. Where do they go? Where do they go to find people like you?
Yeah, so it does depend on where you're living, country to country. I know like Europe, Purple Port, it's like an online platform for models photographers. It's huge. That's where I get all my bookings through when I'm traveling Europe. Australia, it's mainly Instagram and Facebook. I don't know about America, unfortunately, but yeah, it does really depend on where you are as to what platforms kind of used commonly. But I think Instagram is a good base point no matter where you are, because most models will have an Instagram. So it's sort of, if you start following a photographer whose work you like in your sort of local area, they'll be posting photos of models that they work with, and you can kind of just, follow the line, and you'll find some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have so many questions for you. So, this is fascinating because it's interesting, and it's I think I'm trying to ask questions that I think photographers would want to know on how to engage and at least have a starting point to get educated on how to shoot fine art nudes, or this genre of photography. So let's talk about money. We talked about TFP, which is sort of an even exchange of services. What about getting paid? Right, I've seen it on both sides. I have friends that models pay him for them to shoot because they love his work, and that's the money exchange. And then I have other photographers that go in the opposite direction. They hire models because they need someone for a particular kind of shoot that they want to do, and they pay them. How does that work? How do you negotiate who's going to pay who?
Yeah, I think again, like the TFP, it really depends on experience and professionalism.
Yeah.
Where you're at with that. You're not going to have a professional model paying, a really amateur photographer. That's just not going to happen, and vice versa, obviously. It also depends on the type of shoot you want to do. If it's, for example, art nude, it's a lot harder to get a TFP model, so you're probably going to look at paying someone. Also, with sort of genres like that, you want someone who's really comfortable in the genre. You don't want someone who says they'll do art nude and then really uncomfortable being nude, because it's just really awkward for everyone, and you're probably not going to be using the photos. So yeah, it really is context dependent. But I guess you go from a model's point of view, I don't do many TFPs because I've got to a point when I have so many photos of myself, So for me, pretty much all my shoots are paid, unless you're going to take me to an absolutely epic location, then it's debatable. So that's sort of where I've got it. And I know a lot of photographers are the same. They've got so many different photos. So, they'll only pay a model if she's got a particular skill. I know there's one model who's a really professional dancer. So she is able to get paid work from photographers who normally wouldn't pay, because she has this really, unique skill set. So it all is very case by case. And, each photographer can look at what they want to shoot and where they're at. It does get, a lot of photographers will be like, I want to shoot with that certain model, because they love their work. And in that case, you're probably going to pay that model. But yeah, it is very case by case with that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think part of one of the main things in this genre of photography is to make sure you do your research, around the people that you're shooting with and all that, because it can be dangerous. I would imagine. I want to ask you about that. Some of your horror stories. I'm sure you have a couple of them. But before we get to that, how like on set, like I said in the beginning, this is the age of the Me Too movement, and a lot of photographers are just like, you know what, I'm not going near that. I'm going to shoot landscapes, but to protect yourself on set, both from the model standpoint and from the photographer standpoint, what steps should they take? Is it making sure there are multiple people on set when the shoot is going down, or is it just make sure that you've met beforehand with the photographer, maybe for coffee or something, to make sure that both sides aren't insane? What's the best way to proceed to make sure everybody's safe at the actual shoot?
Yeah, I think the pre-shoot communication is key here. So you're having, don't just dump all your ideas on someone, have a back and forth conversation. Like, is this okay? Do you agree with this? Blah, blah, blah. Because then you get a good sense, as a photographer, you get a good sense of the model and vice versa. So I think that's really, really important. Also, reference checks. I always encourage models to do at least 2 reference checks. So, find a model that photographers worked with and message them and be like, hey, I saw you work with so-and-so. What do they like to work with? And photographers can do this with models as well. Message a photographer the models worked with. Because if you're paying, you're investing money into this shoot, you want to know that it's someone who can pose, etc. So definitely do reference checks. I personally, because I'm touring, I don't have time to meet up with photographers for a cup of tea beforehand. It's very like bang, 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 bang. So I really do rely on those reference checks. And yeah, it is sometimes it is a bit of a, I don't know, intimidating industry, I guess, as a model having to meeting up with these people often in remote locations, etc. So yeah, just getting all that information, where are we meeting? Where are we going? What's the plan? I always send like a screenshot of my Google Maps to my mum or my friends so they know where I am. Just all little things like this you can really take to make sure it goes okay.
That's the part. This is me, putting on my dad hat, as a dad to, 2 beautiful young daughters. I'm thinking like, if they, I don't want to stop them from, being photographed, but at the same time, unknown guy, like you said, remote location, it could go badly, and my brain automatically goes to badly. Have you had any situations like that where, it not went completely bad, but it just wasn't what you thought and you had to get out of there, or anything like that?
I've been super lucky. I haven't really had anything that's like, oh my God. I've had incidences, especially when I was starting, because I didn't, now sort of the fact that I'm a bit more well-known, it kind of protects me, I think. But when I was starting, I had photographers who were more experienced than me, and they could, one was like, oh, I need to film all of this. And I didn't feel comfortable with it, but I wasn't at a point where I could say, I didn't feel, because I was a newbie and they were experienced, I didn't feel like I could say anything. But now I would definitely be like, no, that's not being filmed. You know what I mean? So I do think people sometimes take advantage of the newbies, which is awful, obviously. So yeah, I think having a good understanding of what standard you should hold photographers to is important. But yeah, I think the safety aspect is probably the downside of this industry for me. But yeah, I haven't had any bad experiences. I think, those reference checks are so important. Platforms like Purple Port or Model Mayhem, they actually have references on people's pages, which really makes it easy to see who someone's worked with and, contact a model through there or whatever.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I think that do your homework, be safe, and, just basic common sense, right?
Yeah. And also, as a photographer, I would always suggest that they say to the model, if you want to bring someone along, then feel that you can. I think that's important. I know some photographers don't like doing that because it changes the vibe a bit of a shoot. And, it can do. But I think when you're starting out, that's something you just have to deal with, because I think the model safety and comfort is more important than that. Yeah.
And I think just for your own safety as well, I think having other people on set, that will, without someone on set, both directions, it's your word against theirs or their word against yours. So you're opening yourself up to stuff. If there's other people on set, then that changes the dynamic. I don't know. I understand changing the dynamic, and it's less intimate when there's multiple people there, and it's harder to get the shot you're looking for. But on the other side,
Yeah,
I don't want to be
exactly.
in court, fighting for
Yeah.
trying to keep my house, so, so,
Yeah.
well, what are some tips that you can give to photographers when they're actually on the shoot? Right. So you're there, you're on some secluded beach, you're ready to shoot. And, you as let's say you're the more experienced person of the group, the photographer's a little bit nervous and intimidated. There's a beautiful girl in front of me. I forgot how to operate my camera. What do I do? What tips do you give those guys that have found themselves in that situation?
Yeah, I always try to sort of make some break the ice talk, just, how's your day, rah, rah, that kind of stuff. Because, yeah, it took me a while to realize how intimidating it can be for photographers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they're like, oh my God, you're Riley Jade. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, but
Yeah.
now I'm kind of a bit more like aware of that. I think it's really important for photographers, one of the first things they should say is, if I ask you to do anything you're not comfortable with, let me know. And that's such a great platform for good communication. So yeah, having that, one of the first things you say is really important. Obviously, there's the don't touch the model rule. I talk about that in my book. I did a shoot in France, Belgium, sorry, with a photographer who didn't speak any English, and I don't speak French. And we managed to do a whole 2-hour shoot without him putting any arms in place or anything. So, we could do it. So people with the same language can definitely do it. So communicate with your words. I know it can be frustrating, but don't rush over there and put the model's arm where you want it to be. Really step back and communicate. So that's really important. That's kind of, there's lots of little things like just feedback is really important, throughout the shoot, like, oh, is this going the way you wanted to? You're happy with this? Do you want a break? All that just back and forth is really important. I know there's a camera between you and the model, but don't see that as a barrier. You're still there and you need to communicate.
Yeah, no, for sure. Perfect. Yeah. And I also, I've seen photographers and myself included, again, never touch the model. That's the rule. But you can demonstrate the pose, right? And say, yeah, I want you to kind of do this, kick your hips out a little bit like that, and
Yeah.
and then run back behind the camera, and then fine tune with, no, lean a little bit more, So yeah, and you can, like you said, you can do it all verbally and by example. You don't need to run over and say, no, arch your back like this and turn your head.
Cool. Yeah.
You're not a stick figure pipe cleaners, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, very true.
So
Yeah.
Riley, I want to talk about the book, the book that you've written, the PDF. So tell me about the genesis of that book. So was it did you feel compelled to write it because you felt there was so much disinformation floating around? Where did the book come from?
Yeah, well, in a sort of more literal sense, I did a little Instagram post that went really well. And
Cool.
I was in isolation. So I was like, maybe I could do a blog. So I started doing that. And then I was like, well, I have way too much to say. It needs to be an ebook. So that's sort of the basis of how it came about. But I've been lucky enough to model for quite a few workshops, which I really enjoyed, and speak on a panel or two about sort of model etiquette. So yeah, I really enjoyed those experiences. And I was sort of looking, and most of the how to work with models are written from photographers' point of view. And, they have some good information in there, but I think it's really important, that the model has a say in this. So, yeah, that's kind of the basis of where I decided to put it all together. And, yeah, I'm just so happy with how it turned out, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so it was sort of organic. You wrote a little bit, it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now look at it. That's cool.
Yeah.
So if people want to buy that book and they want to check it out, where should they go? Where's it available at?
So it's on the Lulu bookstore. You can go in there and type in front of the lens, or if you want to go to my Instagram, there's a link in my bio which will take you directly there. So yeah,
Awesome.
either or.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, and I'll link to it in the blog post for this episode as well as in the YouTube description. So yeah, you'll get the traffic. What's next for Riley Jade? I know you guys are on lockdown over there still, right?
All our state borders are shut, which, as a touring model, going from state to state is absolute key. So I'm kind of just lying low at the moment. I'm doing a lot of self-portraits because I still want to model. So 10-second
not,
timer,
right?
sprint, put your pose on, keeping me fit at least. But yeah,
Awesome.
really looking forward to getting back to modeling. You know, obviously, I've really enjoyed writing the book, but my passion is getting in front of the camera and doing my thing. So hopefully when COVID stops doing its thing, I can do my thing.
You could do your thing. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, Riley, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. This is fantastic. I'm excited for the book. I think the book is a much needed resource in the photography industry. Like you said, most of the books or articles that we see about this are written from the photographer's point of view. You gotta get it from the model's point of view, just to really
Yeah.
understand that world if you're going to move into that genre. So thank you. I appreciate that you wrote that, and I appreciate you taking the time to let me interview you today.
No worries. I just wanted to say to photographers, don't be scared. You know, models aren't scary. Give it a go, definitely.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Don't be scared. Final words from Riley J.
And communicate.
Okay.
No.
And communicate. Communication is always key in everything, right? In
Yeah.
everything. All right, Riley. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
No worries. Thank you again for having me.
This is Twitter.